Yeah.
You're ready to send your children to war to decide which side of a line Kupyansk lies when it's been in 4 countries in 100 years. I'm not.
Unfortunately, the situation at the bridgeheads near Vorichna and Novominsk is not improving. The Russian enemy is advancing and continues to fortify its positions. This was the latest report from Ukraine's deep state OSINT project. According to the source, the Russian army has expanded its control towards Vikholivka, reaching the southern outskirts of the village, and has also occupied another area in Vorichna. In quotations, the Russian enemy continues to saturate the area with its infantry, usually attacking in small groups that hide in forest strips, houses, and ruins. There aren't enough crews to eliminate them, Deep State noted. And my friends, it is readily apparent that this section of the front, that is, the Kupyansk section, is in a state of crisis for the Ukrainian armed forces. The Deep State report continued as follows. They also added that Russian forces have a significant advantage in FPV drones, which completely dismantle positions, making them impossible to hold. Unfortunately, the existing Ukrainian territorial defense units in the area have been unable to maintain their positions. Soldiers have also criticized local command, particularly the tactical group, for failing to fulfill their responsibilities, Deep State added. Now further south, in the Donbass, another crisis is brewing as Russian media reports that the Russian army has begun actively attacking Ukrainian troops in the Dnipro region. Now on the flip side, there is also this interesting updated report from Ukrainian journalist Yuri Butusov on the situation around Pokrovsk as a result of the recent Ukrainian counterattacks, particularly in the village of Pishchane. In particular, Butusov described how the 425th Ukrainian Skala Brigade pushed Russians out of Pishchane on the west flank of Pokrovsk in the recent counterattack. However, this success was short-lived because as of today, Syriac Maps reports that the Russian army has recaptured the village. Now, a major part of the issue plaguing the Kupyansk sector for Ukraine, and quite frankly, everywhere on the front line, is the insufficiency of available manpower, along with what is called their diminishing combat readiness. Russian media Lenta reported that the combat readiness of the armed forces of Ukraine is declining, said Andrei Kolesnik, a member of the State Duma Defense Committee. This is how the deputy explained the night attack of 40 Ukrainian drones on Russian regions in a conversation with Lenta. In quotations, the intensity of attacks by Ukrainian drones is gradually decreasing. More than 100 unmanned aerial vehicles have previously attacked various regions of our country. Now the intensity is decreasing due to the decrease in the combat readiness of the Ukrainian army. So these are the topics we will cover today: the Kupyansk crisis, the declining combat readiness of Ukraine, and most interestingly, the recent report from Yuri Butusov on the Ukrainian capture of Pishchane near Pokrovsk. Now a quick thank you to all my viewers, as this channel within a week has reached the 3,000 watch hour mark. In fact, I hit it so quickly that even the YouTube analytics haven't updated the count yet. Nevertheless, this means that fan funding will be available soon, and I hope you all support by joining the membership program that I will be creating. Now let's get into it. Andrei Kanashevich, head of the Kupyansk District Military Administration, noted that Russia has intensified shelling of the Vorichna and Kindashivka communities using MLRS, guided aerial bombs, FPV drones, and artillery. In an interview with Ukrainian TV, he noted that, and I quote, "Need to differentiate the situation in the Kupyansk region. There are communities on the left bank of the Oskil River where critical infrastructure has not been operational since October last year. As of today, we have recorded 1,580 people living in 3 communities on the left bank: Petropavlivka, Kurilivka, and Kupyansk. The number of residents there hasn't changed significantly. Those who wanted to leave have already evacuated. However, we understand that increased shelling will push those remaining to consider leaving the left bank of Kupyansk," said the head of the district administration. According to him, the situation is somewhat different in the communities on the right bank of the Oskil River. Kupyansk remains under constant shelling, especially with the use of FPV drones and various types of UAVs. The city streets are dangerous and very few people are outside. However, the situation remains stable and does not yet force residents to flee, he claims. In quotations, in the Vorichna and Kindrashivka communities, we are seeing a significant increase in Russian shelling using MLRS, guided aerial bombs, FPV drones, and artillery. As a result, more people are leaving these areas. Most evacuation requests to the regional administration and the Humanitarian Coordination Center are coming from Vorichna and Kindrashivka. For example, yesterday on February 13th, shelling affected multiple communities across the district, including Veliki Burlak, Kindrashivka, Kupyansk, and Kurilivka. Currently, a mandatory evacuation of children is in place for Kindrashivka and some settlements in Veliki Burlak. Unfortunately, 71 children remain with their parents across 6 or 7 settlements in these communities. Our main task is to continue working with parents to ensure they leave these dangerous areas, summarized Andriy Kanashevich. Then just this morning, Yuri Fedorenko, commander of the 429th Separate Akhalij Drone Systems Regiment, gave an updated report on Ukrainian TV. In quotations, the situation in the Vorichna area is difficult, taking advantage of harsh weather conditions such as frost and fog. The Russians are crossing from the left to the right bank on boats and rafts, attempting to expand their foothold. Currently, the Russian grouping does not have armored support and stable logistics for supplying ammunition and equipment, he claims. This prevents them from fully securing positions for further assaults on Kupyansk. However, the Russian troops continue their attempts. The Ukrainian Defense Forces are conducting round-the-clock strikes on Russian concentration areas and movement routes, Fedorenko stated. Russian forces are trying to widen the wedge that has formed toward Kuliakivka. They are constantly launching assault operations using the carousel tactic. In quotations, firstly, the Russians attack using armored vehicles. When Ukrainian forces destroy this equipment, Russian troops deploy highly maneuverable units. The infantry carries out the next phase of the assault. The Russian army continuously keeps these combinations in motion, attempting to breach the combat formations of the Ukrainian armed forces, explained the commander of the Akhalij regiment. Russian media also reported that the Russian army has begun actively attacking the Ukrainian armed forces in the Dnipro region. This was reported by the Telegram channel Operation Z, war correspondents of the Russian Spring. It is noted that the Berkut group of the Strike and Reconnaissance Division of the 238th Artillery Brigade of the 8th Army of the Russian Armed Forces disabled a Ukrainian troops truck with a strike from a Lancet X-51M. As a result of the strike, some of the manpower in the vehicle was destroyed. On the night of February 11th, Russian armed forces launched a massive missile attack on military facilities in Ukraine. Ukrainian Air Force officials reported that Caliber cruise missiles were presumably launched from the Black Sea. Meanwhile, Andrei Kolesnik, member of the State Duma Defense Committee, commented on the state of combat readiness of Ukraine with respect to the recent front attacks and counterattacks in the Kursk region. In quotations, the goal of the attacks is similar to the goal that they have grabbed onto this wedge, from which they are being slowly kicked out in the Kursk region. All these attacks and attempts to squeeze into the Kursk region are a gesture of desperation and a desire to show that Zelensky is still capable of something, Kolesnik said. Also, according to the deputy, the presidential election campaign has already been practically announced in Ukraine. In quotations, I think that this complex task here is quite simple: to prove his worth, remove competitors, strengthen his negotiating positions, and try to disrupt our relations with the European Union. But as it happens, if you chase 2 hares, you will catch neither, he concluded. Earlier, the Russian Defense Ministry reported that air defense forces destroyed 40 Ukrainian drones overnight. 17 UAVs were shot down over the Volgograd region and 12 over the Kaluga region. Another 9 drones were destroyed over the Rostov region and 2 over the Saratov region. Now on the Pokrovsk front, we have an exclusive report from Ukrainian journalist Yuri Butusov, on the Ukrainian counterattack to take Pishchane, west of Pokrovsk. The village of Pishchane, located 5 kilometers south of Pokrovsk, was liberated from the Russian enemy as a result of the fighting on February 2nd to the 6th, during which more than 80 Russian troops from the 74th Motorized Rifle Brigade of the Russian Armed Forces were allegedly destroyed. Mr. Butusov says, "We also have losses," but of course he claims that they are many times smaller than the Russians. The first to break into the village were soldiers from the 425th Assault Regiment Skala. After the fighters of the 425th Assault Regiment destroyed and captured the main Russian strongholds, soldiers from the 210th Battalion of the 120th Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, as well as the 32nd Mechanized Brigade, entered the village to support them, finishing off the enemy and consolidating the success, he writes. On the outskirts of the village, they are still clearing out individual groups of the Russian enemy who are trying to restore the situation. The 425th Assault Regiment is the reserve of the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. A counterattack, he says, was carried out on General Syrski's order. But now we need to act calmly, without undue euphoria, recognize all the worthy participants in the operation, name the factors that ensured success, and the problems that exist in this area of defense. The village of Pishchane was liberated by the 425th Assault Regiment not for the first time, but for the 4th time in the last 2 months, Butusov claims. Previously, separate Russian assault groups entered there. Skala then entered and cleared them. Then another unit was put on defense in the village, and due to obvious problems in organization and management, these units withdrew. They could not be reinforced, and the Russians occupied the village again. One of the landings near Pishchane was cleared by the fighters of the 425th OSHP 14 times. The assault on Pishchane for the 4th time was a difficult operation, as the Russians had deployed significant forces there to defend, entrenched themselves, and offered strong resistance. The key factor in the operation was not the quantity, but the quality of organization, training, and the will of the Ukrainian infantrymen, the headquarters of the 425th Infantry Regiment, as well as significant changes on the eve of the operation regarding planning, management, and UAV interaction made at the OTU and TGR levels. Firstly, he says, the commander of the 425th, Arkavyi, received a reasonable support and some freedom in planning from the commanders of the OTU and TGR, which made it possible to qualitatively prepare assault groups from among ordinary mobilized fighters and quickly execute the attack plan. Second, he says, the commander of the OTU, Tarnavsky, attracted experts to improve the organization and use of UAVs and created a joint fire support center, to which he appointed the commander of the 55th Artillery Brigade, S. Zuk, and one of the commanders of the Lazar OZSPN of the National Guard, K. Bondarenko, was appointed to control the UAVs. That is, the command granted the authority to use the main means of destruction to really competent and motivated officers. Thirdly, Syrski's decision to support the troops in Pishchane concentrated high-quality and motivated UAV units with competent commanders and operators from the following brigades, which Butusov proceeds to list, and I won't read each one here. He goes on to say that the Russians experienced qualitative changes in the planning and use of UAVs, and this is a very important experience that needs to be scaled up in other areas. This was not a random success in character, it was systematic and coordinated work, which is worth noting. An echeloned drone front was built in Pishchane, a controlled system, and this provided the opportunity to effectively complete the task despite the high activity and massive strikes of Russian drones and artillery. And all this was done in a short time. All this was done on the enthusiasm and motivation of the commanders of the UAV units, who found a common language, interaction, and with all their might, without sleep or rest, supported our heroic infantry. And the well-trained and supplied infantry was able to brilliantly perform the most difficult task. And that is how Mr. Butusov closed off his report. However, as revealed in various posts, both from pro-Russian and pro-Ukrainian sources on X, including Suryak maps, the Russians were able to recapture Pishchane just as of yesterday.